how many of us would want our children to be an engineer? How many of us would want our children to be a hairdresser? Where would you send them? All this has to do with our mindset, and we need to see where are we thinking, and if we are not going to change our thinking, it doesn't matter how great the plans and the visions are, we are not going to see the impact that we want to see. So with that, let me get into my presentation. So what is the impact of investing in research in TVET? If you study the different countries that have actually made an impact with development, the countries that we admire, you will see that they have all invested heavily in TVET, which is where our government documents come in, our national documents come in. And you will see that when there is that strategic investment, not just investment, but it must be strategically planned. And you look at not just upscaling, not just giving them skills. And that is another challenge that I have observed. What you do is you just tell them, all right, I want you to service the car. That's it. If you can service the car, you're fine. I want you to build that chair. If you can do that, that's okay. So there was a very good example given about what counts as research and what doesn't count as research. We count research and development as new knowledge. So, but when we are training TVET, are we training them to think like that? Are we training them to ask questions? Is this the best design that we can use? Is this the best way that we can service the car? Is there another way? Is there, what are the other alternatives? If we don't start to see the potential in our own trainees, in our own VTCs, for them to think at the level of an engineer, for example, then we're going to still stay where we are. So the strategic investment speaks to when you see a plumber or a mechanic, what do you see? Someone who's just going to reproduce what they learned at a VTC, or do you expect them to go one step higher, one step different from how they have been trained? Is our training actually asking them? Are you asking them to reproduce what they have learned, or are you challenging them to think differently? When you give them a project, do you want them to reproduce what's in a book, or do you want them to come up with something innovative and creative? So if we're doing that with the engineers, why are we neglecting that with our TVET? So what we will see is that the strategic investment will enhance the quality and relevance of vocational education. It supports the workforce development. It promotes the overall national prosperity, and it improves the industry partnerships. And all this speaks to, if we look at our national documents, where we want to go with the country and why there is so much emphasis on investing in TVET. Now, here are a few countries that you might have visited, you may admire, and what you will see with these countries is that a major part of the reason why they have progressed as far as they have is because they have invested with research in TVET. It has played a very, very significant role. I'll just give you an example of Germany. They don't look down on their plumbers. Even if you go and speak to a professor, you might find that that professor actually started in TVET, and he would have maybe started as an electrician and then worked his or her way up. So again, it's the mindset. They don't see you going to a vocational education system as something less than going to a university. And that is something that all these countries have in common. They don't see TVET as something that needs to be sidelined and something you go to just because you can't make it into university. There is a significance that is given to it, and there's a pride that comes with it. Some of the lessons that we can learn from these countries is, I'm not going to go through all of them, but just to highlight, I've picked 5, is the training model, where we look at apprenticeship and work-based learning. So it's not just reproducing what is in the book. We have to work with the industry. You have to gain the skills. So we have, and for that to happen, there must be on-the-job training. There must be apprentices. But while we say that, the other question I have is, are the people at the industry trained well enough to support the trainees who are sent for apprenticeship? Do they know how to mentor? Do they know how to coach them in order to get the best out of them? Research-based teaching methods. If you go to any classroom today and you look at the setup of a classroom anywhere in the country, let's not go anywhere else, let's look at what's happening at home right now. Whether it's in Windhoek, a private school, or you go to a rural school. Have you noticed that the model and setup of the classroom is the same as 50 years ago? We are still using the same teaching methods, we are using the same, if you go into classrooms, they all have these nice lecture-based approaches. Students must sit still for 45 minutes and pay close attention to what we are saying. But research in education has gone far beyond. Today we are talking about education 4.0, where we are looking at innovative ways of teaching them and making learning practical. So our teaching methods, is it actually based on research, or are we just teaching the way we were taught many, many years ago? The focus on skills development. So, but it's not just doing what my teacher can do, but going even beyond. As a teacher, what you want your student to do is to actually rise above what you yourself are able to do. And when it comes to the TVET systems, they keep an eye on the evolving industry needs and encouraging the research-driven processes. So we don't do things the way we used to do 10 years ago. We change, we learn, we adapt. So if we are not going to adapt, and adaptability is key here. If we are not going to learn, if we are not going to adapt, we're going to be left behind. Those of you who are familiar with Darwin's theories, who knows what he said? Is it the strongest species that survives? Is it the most intelligent ones that survive? Who knows the answer to that? It's the ones that adapt. So if we don't adapt, if we don't change, if what is happening in the training institutions, if what is happening in the industry is what used to happen 50 years ago, then we are not going to see the impact that we want. And also to prioritize TVET as part of the country's economic development strategy. And this is already in place, but what is the major block is how are we implementing it? How are we understanding these plans and policies that have been put forward, and how are we implementing it? Is it just words on the paper, or can you actually see the vision that is in those documents? So I'm going to talk quickly about some of the strategies that we can look at to promote research. And one of them is to have dedicated research centers or institutes which focus on TVET. You don't need to create a new building. We can look at what we actually have. And when it comes to research, you cannot just sit in, if we are talking about really making an impact in TVET, it's not enough to sit in your office and read a lot of journals and start typing out your document. You need collaboration, and the collaboration must be between the academics, the industry, the policymakers. All of us have to work together. If we're going to have this separation between the policymakers, the industry, the VTCs, and the universities, we are not going to make the impact that we want to make. So some of the things, what I believe in is not just saying the words, but also walking the talk. So one of the things that we have done in our department, it's a very small department, is that we are looking at how can we make a part of our department to become such a research center which actually promotes research. Now, one of the models that Germany has used, which made it a very, very productive in the area of manufacturing, is they used a methodology called a learning factory. Some call it a teaching factory, and it's a very effective strategy of training. In what you do in the university is that you bring the industry, you bring your academics, you bring an interdisciplinary group, because it's not just if you look at, for example, just the construction of this building, it's just not one trade that is involved in it. There's different trades that come together. Engineers don't work on their own. We all come together. So what they do is they simulate what actually happens in the industry in the university, and they come up with actual projects. Not a question from a textbook, but work together, academics working together with the industry to come up with actual projects where there will be benefit for both the industry and also for the university.